Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right. I think Jill's going to introduce you here, and then we'll let you take it away.
Okay.
All right. So next up, we have Erik Dallman. He learned to make angel food cakes from his great-grandmother and his great-aunt. He's been baking them since he was very young, and he's created many delicious variations from the original family recipe. And we're going to let him take it away.
Thank you very much. All right, let's just get right into the video.
I think you need to share your computer sound, Erik. I still can't hear the audio on your video.
Hi, I'm Erik Dallman with the Clinton Eagles 4-H Club in Douglas County, Kansas. Today, I'm going to share with you how to make homemade angel food cake. The reason why I love angel food cake so much is because of the long history of family tradition of having this tasty cake at all of our family gatherings. This is my great-grandma's mother baking over a century ago. This is my great-grandma baking in her kitchen about half a century ago. My great-grandma made an angel food cake for my mom's birthday every year with no icing. And I wanted to continue the family tradition of making this awesome fluffy cake. So when I was 8, I made my first angel food cake for the county fair. I even made a book of my first fair entry and gave it to my great-grandma to thank her for inspiring me how to learn to make angel food cakes. So let's get started on making an original homemade angel food cake. And later, I will show you some other variations on flavors that I had developed that are just as delicious as the original. Here's the recipe that I use. This is my great-grandma's handwritten recipe, and like all recipes, there's always tips, tricks, and secrets, and I will share those with you as we go along. The first step is to gather up all the supplies. You will need an angel food cake pan, mixer, measuring cups and spoons, egg separators, a spatula, a knife, and a bottle to invert the cake pan onto while it cools. The second step is to gather up the ingredients. We'll need cake flour, sugar, eggs, salt, cream of tartar, vanilla, and almond extracts. I would also like to share with you about why the quality of the ingredients are so important. I use Swan's cake flour, and it is the same flour that my family has used for generations. The first question that comes up about flour is usually gluten. If you truly have a gluten allergy, then by all means, consider using a gluten-free cake flour. Otherwise, use a high-quality cake flour so you get all the fluffiness. That is what angel food cake is all about. Gluten is essential for a cake to hold its shape and also helps the angel food cake rise up to its airy glory. Too much gluten makes baked goods chewy, which is fine for breads, but not what you want in your cake. Cake flour has much less protein, then also less gluten, than all-purpose or bread flours, so it is the perfect gluten-protein ratio for an angel food cake. Swan's cake flour has been around since the late 1800s, and it is 27 times finer than all-purpose flour, and it is pure and does not contain leavening agents or salt. The dry ingredients of an angel food cake include the sugar, flour, cream of tartar, and salt. So make sure those items are stored in dry and steady temperatures. Moisture in any of the dry ingredients will cause problems in your cake and could cause it to fall. I use baker's sugar because it is very fine. When I do not have ultrafine baking sugar, I will take regular sugar and put it in the blender until a little puff of sugar dust comes out, and that will make regular sugar much finer too if you do not have baker's sugar. Sugar is the tenderizer of the cake and helps it rise up. We will be using it in both the flour mixture and the egg and extract mixture in our recipe today. Baker's sugar dissolves faster and smoother, and it measures just the same as regular granulated sugar. I still sift it, even though it is the ultrafine baking sugar, just to make sure that there are absolutely no clumps. Eggs bind the ingredients and hold them together, so they are a very important part of our recipe today. You will need approximately 10 to 12 eggs, depending on size, but the eggs need to be room temperature for the best results. So make sure you get the eggs out of the refrigerator first while you're preparing everything else. I think that they're easier to separate when they're cold, so I separate my egg whites first and then let them set to get to room temperature. Egg proteins, just like the proteins in flour, are the glue that helps give the cake its shape. Eggs are essential for an angel food cake, but not just any eggs, and definitely not the whole egg. Only the whites are used in angel food cakes. Egg whites are by far the most important ingredient in the lofty angel food cake. Quality is paramount. We had tried many different types of eggs, and each time my mom would say, "No, these were not really like her grandma's egg whites. Something was missing." After several years of us making cakes together, I finally realized that my mom meant the eggs were not homegrown or farm fresh. Her grandma had raised chickens, and those farm fresh eggs were likely the reason her cakes always tasted the best. Egg quality has decreased since the 1950s, when large-scale poultry production began. Everything, not just eggs, has started tasting blander, as real food has become so processed that it has lost its true flavor. This is why I like making homemade angel food cakes so much, because just using basic ingredients at home, it tastes fantastic compared to a highly processed store-bought cake, or a cake from a box mixed with preservatives. Once, I made 14 cakes for a community service project for 4-H, and we purchased eggs on sale in an off-brand grocery store. They were not worth it. It took nearly twice as many eggs to get the egg whites we needed on the first batch, and they were thin and tasteless. I had to throw them all out and start over. Never sacrifice quality for price on eggs. Your cakes and your taste buds will pay for it and regret it. When you separate the eggs, make sure you do not get any shells or yolks in your egg whites, because any slight bit of egg yolk could cause the eggs not to whip up properly. I separate one egg at a time and then pour them into a measuring cup. That way, if one egg splits off, it will not ruin my entire cup. Egg whites are the most important ingredient in our cake to help get the fluffiness to hold together. Be sure to save your yolks for other recipes. I like using mine to make homemade ice cream. Salt is a very small but necessary ingredient. Salt enhances the flavor in your cake and helps the flour create a stronger crumb, and it also helps with browning. One of my favorite parts of an angel food cake is that flaky top piece that is almost like a freshly baked croissant, where the flakes just melt in your mouth with true flavor. Salt helps that process. It aids in making the flavors bold and aromatic. Salt just helps make everything a little bit more delicious. A little goes a long way. The main types of salt are iodized table salt, kosher salt, and sea salt. Any basic salt will work because all that is needed is only a 1/4 teaspoon. No salt is really any better or worse, so use the one you are most comfortable with. We've used basic iodized salt, sea salt, and even kosher salt. Although the salt grain varies widely in sea and kosher salts, the consistency of regular table salt is very reliable. Regular iodized salt does not change the flavors as harshly as other bolder ones do, and in a bind, even the salt shaker with generic processed salt with additives works just fine. Just be careful, because table salt usually contains sodium iodine and anti-caking agents that can leave an undesirable effect on fine baked goods, like an angel food cake. Many bakers recommend kosher salt as it has no additives, so you get pure sodium chloride. Others recommend sea salt. However, we have noticed a considerable difference in cake flavors when we use sea salt. It is more coarse and does not sift in with the flour as well as table salt. Sea salt can also have a stronger flavor, more like the difference between regular caramels and sea salt caramels, and it can drastically change the taste of a cake. Sea salt also tends to make an angel food cake seem less airy. Some salts are processed differently, and the measurements may not be the same if they are a thicker, coarser salt grain, so be careful when adjusting any measurements. If the salt has a fine grain that is like regular table salt, the measurements probably won't change. The crystals of salt that are the smallest will dissolve the best in baking, as nobody wants a big chunk of salt crystal in their bite of sweet, delicious angel food cake. Even though it seems like salt has a shelf life of a dinosaur, that doesn't not mean the work it does in the baking will do its job if it has lost its potency. Make sure the salt is not clumpy or so old that it has discolorations or inconsistencies in the texture. Salt is something that stays in the pantry for what seems like forever. This does not mean that the quality will stay in it that long. Some salts have extra ingredients like preservatives and stabilizers, like dextrose. These are not that helpful in the baking process, and if the preservatives are strong enough, they can even alter the taste and how evenly the cake bakes. Salts without additives are the best. Salt may be the smallest ingredient in the cake, but the quality and taste does make a difference. Salt is there to increase sweetness and flavor. Every ingredient in angel food cake serves a purpose, and by using only the finest quality ingredients can you ensure a wonderfully tasty cake. Cream of tartar has always been a funny ingredient to me. It is not creamy, and it really has nothing to do with tartar. Cream of tartar is a byproduct of the winemaking process. It is the residue at the bottom of the barrel after the wine is poured out of the barrel. Technically, it is potassium hydrogen tartrate. It is used to stabilize the egg whites. It helps the egg whites hold the air when you beat the eggs, which is exactly what we want in an angel food cake. Substituting lemon juice or white vinegar for cream of tartar is a common suggestion, but it really doesn't work for angel food cakes. It will provide too much liquid and the eggs will not whip up properly. I have tried lemon juice for my lemon angel food cake recipe, and it was an epic fail. First, the eggs did not whip up, and then the cake produced a bubbly texture on top. Liquid is the enemy of angel food cakes, as they will not be fluffy, and you definitely do not want acidic flavors like vinegar in your cake. So be sure to always use cream of tartar when making an angel food cake. Last, but definitely not least, are the extracts. This is where the flavor is really enhanced in an angel food cake. Always use pure extracts. Synthetic and artificial flavorings are just not as tasty as pure vanilla and almond. These two extracts are my family's signature ingredients that just always make the cake pop with true flavor. I try to avoid any artificial flavors when possible. Some flavors are not available in pure form, like our bubblegum flavored cake that uses Watkins bubblegum extract. That is obviously an artificial flavor, but you can still look for quality products that will give you consistent taste profiles. My favorite part about the flavorings is that they add 0 calories, and the cake still remains low in fat when you experiment with different flavors. So that is an overview of the ingredients and their roles in an angel food cake. Now we're ready to get going on the mixing. I split the process up into 3 main categories, which also makes it easier to adjust the recipe later if you want to change up the flavors. If you think of an angel food cake as the dry and the wet ingredients, or the flour mixture and the egg and the extract mixture, then you can focus on each one and you will not forget any ingredients. I've forgotten salt before, which doesn't make a huge difference, but any other ingredients that are left out will definitely cause some major issues. Okay, let's get into the kitchen. The first thing you want to do is get your flour mixture sifted. Sift together the 1 cup of cake flour, 7/8 cups of sugar, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. 7/8 cup also equals 3/4 cup plus 1 tablespoon. Sift this all together at least 3 times so that the mixture is uniform, and then set it aside. Later, we will fold this flour mixture into the egg and extract mixture. So as you can see, we're all ready to go here. I like to have all my stuff laid out right before I start making it. You can use either the whisk attachment or this kind of attachment. It's just personal preference. I think it looks up a little bit better with this, but both of them still work really well. All right, so here we have our room temperature eggs. So we got these, we're gonna pour these in here. Easy, and then we're ready to go. Okay, so we have our eggs in here, and you wanna turn this on, and you want it to go for about 30 seconds, just so they get a little bit of foam in there before you add in all the other ingredients. Okay, so now we have a little bit of foam going in there, so I'm gonna add my salt and my cream of tartar. Okay, so now since it's got a little more foam in there, we're gonna add 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract and 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract. So now you want to add the sugar into the cake, and the way you do sugar with angel food cake is you don't want to just dump it in there. You want to sort of pour it in slowly, just sort of a gentle like flow down into the batter. Like this. Okay, so as you can see, I have my peak now in the batter, so now I'm going to start folding in the flour and sugar mixture. So I like to fold in my flour mixture about 4 to 5 times so that it doesn't all get in there at one time. You can separate it out. So basically I sift in my flour in small batches and then I fold it in as I go, like this. Okay, so at the very end you want to make sure you go all the way around the edge and then also go around the bottom and make sure you don't have any big flour chunks in there. Okay, so after you put your batter into the pan, you want to take a knife and just sort of slowly go in a circle motion around the pan. The reason why we want to do this is we don't want any air bubbles in our cake. We do want our cake to be fluffy and airy, but we don't want any massive pockets of air where it could collapse. Okay, so you want to make sure your oven's nice and preheated to 375. We're going to take the cake, put it in the oven, and then set it in there for a nice long 30 minutes. So as you can see, I just took the cake out of the oven. What you want to do is you want to immediately put it onto a bottle. Nice and straight on there. And then what I like to do is I like to leave it on here overnight most of the time, but since we were doing this earlier in the day, it should be ready to eat, cool off about dinner time. Okay, so we made the cake this morning and it's cooled off for about 5 or 6 hours now. It's dinner time, so let's take it off the bottle. And there we go. Looks really good. So now that it's cooled off, you want to loosen it from the pan. So I'm just going to use like a regular butter knife. And then you're just going to go around the edges to make sure it doesn't stick completely around the pan. Okay, so we've loosened the edges around the cake. Now we're going to separate it from the 2-piece pan. Okay, so we loosen it from the side piece. Now we need to loosen it from the bottom. Just kind of want to take your knife and just go around the whole pan. So I'm ready to lift it off. So we're gonna take it off here, set it on the cake platter, and ready to go. My personal favorite part about this is getting all the crumbs off the center piece here. Also, I want to mention this quick about 2-piece pans. The reason why we use 2-piece pans is because it's easier to get it out of a 2-piece pan, so you just lift it out like I showed you. But in 1-piece pans, the cake rises a little bit higher, so it just sort of depends on what you want. It's on here. Every cake looks a little bit different, and a lot of people don't leave this crust stuff on the edge here, but in my family, that is the favorite part of the cake for us. And now we're going to show you how to cut it. To cut it, you need a nice, good serrated knife because to cut it, we're going to use a gentle sawing motion. There are things called angel food cake breakers that can sort of break apart the pieces, but I think one of these serrated knives personally just makes a much better slice. Gentle sawing motion. Okay, so here's your slice of angel food cake. Looks great on the plate. It also goes very perfect with whipped cream, or you can use your yolks from the cake to make homemade ice cream to go with it. Always a great combo. I love enjoying some fresh homemade angel food cake with my family. It smells delicious, and I wish I could share it with you in person this year. But instead, you can make your own at home, and hopefully you will enjoy the process as much as I do. Angel food cake is like heaven on earth. Now, I will share some variations on my original family recipe with you. My great-grandma would mostly add a drizzle icing and change up the flavor with her cakes. But my mom and I really don't like icing that much. So I have experimented with different flavors by changing the extracts and adding dry flavors, like cinnamon. Also, it keeps the cake low-fat and low in sugar when you are not adding all the extra ingredients for icing toppings. My favorite flavor is cinnamon. The adjustment to the flour mixture is just adding 1 tablespoon of ground cinnamon to the dry ingredients that you fold in. And also, be sure to sift the cinnamon into the mixture to get it evenly dispersed throughout the cake. And the change on the extract mixture is to replace the almond extract with cinnamon extract, and then adjust the vanilla and just to 1 teaspoon of each of the vanilla and cinnamon extracts. The cinnamon cake looks a little browner as it rises in the oven, so be sure to let it completely bake because that top flaky layer is very tasty when it is cooked just right. A flavor that we love for Thanksgiving is pumpkin. We have pumpkin angel food cake instead of pumpkin pie at our turkey dinner. This cake can be made a couple of different ways. The first way is to actually add some pumpkin into the batter. About 1/4 cup, and it'll add some great flavor, and you add this to the egg mixture right before it reaches the fluffy peaks. Adding the pumpkin filling from a can really increases the moisture in the cake, and it'll take about 5 minutes longer to bake, and the cake will be denser and heavier than a regular angel food cake. If you want a lighter version, which is the one that I prefer, then skip the canned pumpkin and instead add spices and extracts for the flavor. In the dry ingredient mixture, add some pumpkin spice, about 1 tablespoon. In the extract mixture, reduce the vanilla and almond and add in 1 teaspoon of pumpkin extract. Pumpkin angel food cake is great with a little whipped cream, just like pie. One flavor that sounds odd but tastes really good is bubblegum. On flavors like this, you will need to delete the vanilla and almond extracts and just use the bubblegum flavoring. I also like to add a few drops of food coloring to match the flavor to the cake color. Another flavor that I really enjoyed making was cherry limeade. I added lime extract and then folded in the cherries right before I put it in the oven. It was a great summer flavor. Another great summer flavor is lemon blueberry. Be sure to let the berries dry out a bit before you add them in, because you do not want extra moisture in the cake as it will not rise up properly. There are so many different delicious flavor combinations. Some that we have tried are coffee hazelnut, pistachio almond, caramel, cream de mint, and several different citrus and fruit flavors. I also like to use different pans. I have tried a heart-shaped pan and a flower-shaped pan. In 4-H, I love using green food coloring for cakes. So try your own experimenting and see what new and tasty flavors you can come up with. Happy baking! Angel food cake might not be quite as American as apple pie, but it sure is close. Wishing you all the best, and God bless America.
Well, that was great, Erik. We do have a few questions. And I'm got to tell you, I'm really missing being able to have samples of that cake this year. So, uh-oh, we can't hear you. You might need to switch it back from the video. Yeah.
Hello?
There we go. Good. Okay.
My I just messed up.
So we do have a few questions. We've got one person has asked whether the pan is greased or prepared in any way.
No, the pan is not greased or prepared in any way. You just pour the batter into the pan and then put it in the oven. You do not do anything to alter the pan at all.
Okay. And have you ever tried it with just regular all-purpose flour?
Yes. So we have, actually, no, I've never tried all-purpose flour. I have only used Swan's cake flour because that's what my great-grandma used. That's just what my family's always used. But I would recommend cake flour personally, but you can use all-purpose flour if you need to.
Okay. And I have another person who said they're not a great fan of almond flavor. So could you just increase the vanilla if you're using the almond?
Yeah, no. So for example, you could, so in normal angel food cake flavoring, it's 1.5 teaspoons of almond and then only a half almond. So you could totally do that with an almond cake if you just want a little bit of the flavoring in there, but not that much.
So it was 1.5 teaspoons of the vanilla and a half of the almond? Is that what you said?
Yes, and okay. You really cannot taste the almond. Like in a plain angel food cake, you cannot taste the almond.
Okay. And how about, do you add any milk of any kind? No milk products?
No milk products are added to the cake.
Okay. Well, I think it's really interesting that there's no fat or butter in it. And have you ever experimented with other kinds of sweetener besides sugar?
Yes, we actually did try a sugar-free angel food cake once. It was a chocolate sugar-free flavor. It did not work that well. So we tried stevia as a substitute. It didn't really work that well. I have not tried other things, but yeah.
Was that a powdered stevia or?
Powdered stevia.
Or was it, I'm just curious. It seems like the sugar would have a lot to do with the consistency of the batter.
Yeah, no, the sugar is the main, that really helps the main consistency of the batter, yeah.
Okay, cool. And someone else is asking, how long do you beat the eggs? How long?
How long? Beating the eggs, there's no really specific time. About 2 to 3 minutes is normally about the amount of time, but it's when you get that peak in the batter. So that, I mean, but that usually takes about 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay. And so if you are using the regular sugar, because you don't have the other, would you measure it after you put it through the blender, or does it matter?
You can measure the sugar after you put it in the blender. I would say that that's better than measuring it before, because because some of it will puff up into the dust. So I'd say measure it after if you put it in the blender.
Okay. Okay. Let me see if we've got any. Somebody else was asking if they'd love to see the old photo from the 1800s again. I don't know how easy it would be for you to get to that, but that is one of the requests that we had here.
Yeah, sure. I can go back to the old photo from the 1800s. I can totally do that. Give me just a moment here.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Erik Dallman with the Clinton Eagles. Go. This is my great.
There we go.
There we go.
Oops. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, that is a great photo.
Yes,
that
it
is
is.
A great photo.
Yeah.
And then I have another question that says, can you add a frosting of some sort? I think you mentioned a drizzle type frosting, maybe.
You can totally add a frosting to angel food cakes. We personally don't do it because we personally just don't like drizzles and icing, but I've had icings and we've done like glazed drizzles on cakes before. They taste really good with it. My family just personally doesn't like it.
All right. Let's see. I see another one here. Oh, they're wanting to see the original recipe. I'm not sure we have a screen of that. Oh, you can? Okay, perfect.
Right there. There you go.
Oh, there we are. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, there we go. Perfect. Yeah. So, so there's the original recipe. And what is your favorite cake that you have ever made?
The favorite cake that I've ever made, that's a really good question. I think the favorite one for me personally would be we made a cake for 4th of July, and we were able to do 3 different things of food coloring. We were able to make the plain white flavor, we were able to add in blue food coloring and red coloring to make a red, white, and blue angel food cake. So then when you sliced it, you got a red, white, and blue slice. I think that's my personal favorite cake.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yes, it was.
So do you plan personally to pursue a career in cooking or baking, or is this more of a hobby for you?
Making angel food cakes is definitely more of a hobby. I love doing it, but no, I do not see myself going into a career as a baker. I love technology, but baking, I just love baking angel food cakes, but it's definitely more of a hobby.
Okay, the last thing, well, actually there's 2 last things. One is a person who says they just can't wait to try this and wondered if it would work in a bundt pan.
Yes, angel food cake batter should work in a bundt pan. Yeah, no, it's harder to get out of a bundt pan, but you can still totally make an angel food cake in a bundt pan.
Okay. And one person is saying, could they see a photo of the cake again?
Yes, I will find a photo of a cake again. There's
there
one.
it was. There we go, with the first place ribbon too.
Yep, first place from the Douglas County Fair.
Marvelous. I'm not surprised. All right, well, that was just wonderful, Erik. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me today. Always a pleasure to do stuff for the library. I love the How To Festival.